Oh my. Haven't done one of these. Haven't done one of these in. I don't think I've ever done one of these, period. Alright. Goodness. This will be coming out probably once I get the YouTube channel going, which is going to be interesting because it's like I'm recording it before the channel is out, and yet I'm talking about it probably once it is out, so it's just going to be kind of a weird little bit of time there, but I'm just trying to get some other things going before I launch into that. And I was going to draw today, but I just found myself like drained because I've got a lot of work that I've been doing, which is nice, being able to do stuff is good, and having a steady job is a good thing. Obviously, I've been feeling kind of good there in on the whole. But it's demanding, so I'm finding myself with a lot of energy still, but I can't put it into the drawing. Don't have that vibe there for me. So, I'm trying to do this instead. And this is definitely new territory for me because, on a blog, I can write, no problem. Get things focused, clear, do what I have to do there, no problem. Free balling it, however, whoo, that's scary. That's a scary thing to do. It's tricky. It's tricky. But, I think I got to do this a little bit. I'm feeling like I got things to say, and it's better to kind of say it in this way than it is to write, because we're just much more visual nowadays. We much prefer to have something that we're seeing, or maybe not only just visual but auditory too. Like we like to listen. We like to have something more tactile, I guess would be the best word to say. Reading can be like that, but it's like you got to put a lot of focus into reading. So I get it. I get it if people can find it tough to read nowadays. It's a bit of a conundrum for me. And I'm a guy who writes a lot, so what a wonderful irony that is, isn't it? That whatever. We're not getting into that. Let's get to something I want to get to. And the thing that I've been thinking about rather is 1984. I know. It's like it's a funny thing to say. If you know me, I'm a little bit more of a lefty, I'm a little bit more of a lefty, so it's a bit of a thing to do when we talk about George Orwell. Mostly it's to say how the right doesn't know about him. It's such a fucking, Christ. I'm rambling. I was thinking about George Orwell, but I wasn't necessarily thinking about it in the Jacobin sense. Like, if you want to get a sense of like, what is it? How is the right abusing George Orwell? Read a Jacobin article, at your peril, of course. They're good. They're good. It's just it's a topic that they do a lot, but for me, the thing that I'm interested in is Newspeak. I'm interested in Newspeak. That, to me, was a thing that has stuck with me. And, I haven't really revisited 1984, the book. I am thinking to watch the movie and see, what what it kind of captures there. I have bits and pieces of 1984 for sure, and the thing that really kind of gets me is the Newspeak, because it's an interesting little concept. The idea that all the language in that society in is it Oceania, or you're in the society of 1984. Let's just put it that way. They speak about how the language is constructed in such a manner such that all these big concepts are just cut down little by little into something small. And you just have these small words, curt words, blunt little words that just capture all of human existence. And, I certainly think that my boy George, he was right on the money on that. Because, there's a lot of short words that exist that are just, they're robbing greater meaning out there. And they can be twisted in certain ways. I think the big evil Newspeak word that we're having to live with, at least for my own purposes, is content. Content is a very evil word, I think, because it's just like all that you do is just simplified down into consumption. It's just consumption. It's like there's no artistry to it. There's no soul to it. There's no humanity to it, really. It's just more meat for the meat grinder. And it's it can feel kind of demoralizing in some respect, but you have to consider then, like, if you're a sort of person who does a lot of little things, like you do things here and there, well, what word can I use to describe all this stuff? Work can sometimes feel like it captures that, but it doesn't seem, you're not always doing like something really magnificent. There's nothing really grand to what you're doing there. And it is also a short word, but that word at least feels a little more, there's a little more life to it than content. But content there's a casualness to content that feels more apt, that it makes more sense if you are the kind of person that does a lot of things and just goes into that. And it's just like, well, I hate how it's like such a soulless word, but it describes things pretty well. It's a necessary evil, essentially. Woke is definitely a Newspeak word. And it's a very, very fucked up one. Fucked up both in the way that the libs use it and the way that the right uses it. I'm sure if you want to get all pedantic, we could say that the left, the real left, or whatever, they use woke in a bad way as well. We are all without sin. Or rather, we are with sin. We are not all without sin. That's what I wanted to say. We are all not without sin. But, the libs and the right, they definitely use woke in very insidious ways. The right, of course, is like they use woke to describe everything, and ultimately the thing that they most tend to use it in when they're using that word is just to say, like, oh, there's too much diversity. There's too much diversity going on. I don't want that diversity. It's a nice way for them to hide their bigotry. Because, that's how some of these people on the right are. They don't want to say it with their full chest. Just want to hide behind the word. Woke. A I'm not calling you the N-word. I'm just saying that you're woke. That's, immediately saying the N-word in that respect is being reductive, but of the right and how they sort of argumentate with woke, but I'm not really interested in getting into that. And of course you have the libs. And that is where like the normal people who, get annoyed by both the right and the left in this sense is with the libs, though we end up, libs and left end up together. But you know what I mean? It's like the normal people who are just not concerned too much with politics, with culture war, with all that bullshit, Like the reason that they kind of find revulsion to the word woke there is just that it gets to be very, it's performative. It's not really addressing any real issues. It's that old joke of, okay, now the drone bombers that we're sending over to the Middle East are being piloted by women, by black people, by the queers, by disabled people. Oh, wonderful. So great. So great. We live in such progressive times. That's how woke tends to be seen in such a negative light. And yet ultimately what woke was meant to be is like, awake to recognize how screwed up things are. Try to be more cognizant of the problems that exist and more and work to fix the injustices in the world. That is woke woke is a term that has been warped because of its simplicity, unfortunately. And so unfortunately, I kind of did say that woke is like a perfect Newspeak word, but unfortunately it's not. That's not the thing. That's not the real issue of woke, is that woke wasn't meant to be Newspeak. Woke was meant to make things easier, and it then got thrown into Newspeak. It's a bit of a sadness, but I'll put a pin on that. But it's like, I was thinking about those like the ways that words get simplified. But I do also think that, for as much as there is something to be said of how corrupting it is that we just and we get these big concepts and we're just making them so much smaller so that, that dreaded hoi polloi can understand what's going on, can live their lives without any problem, I think there is a problem as well with going the other way. Like a euphemism can be very insidious when it's short, but it can be just as insidious when it's long. Like, I'm thinking about that George Carlin bit that he does where he's saying like, okay, before, at the start we had shell shock and now we've ended up with post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, we got a nice longer word. It takes more time to say and is far less aggressive. Cool. Are we doing anything about it? Are we doing anything about PTSD on the whole? I mean, ultimately, in some ways, I'm sort of arguing against, I'm trying to make a point against the notion that, all becomes small and small is so bad, but then ultimately that does then rear its head again, because even when we, like with a word like post-traumatic stress disorder, even though we've made it longer, we then still find a way to shorten it, and ultimately we're just not doing anything. We're not doing anything there, in a grand sense. But I think what I was trying to get at is that you can have these large words that exist, and you can get into you can show off just how well you did in college and university and whatnot with the vocabulary that you use, but then ultimately you're still not really solving anything. If anything, you're just kind of obfuscating further. And you sometimes need to simplify things. You're gonna. It's not necessarily a good thing sometimes, because you run the risk of that. Then the simplification of it then getting warped. But you need some way to make it easier for other people to get, because that's the big problem. That's the big thing that throws off the left, is just that we're always with the big stuff, but when it comes down to the small stuff, when it comes down to making it simple, that's the problem. And I'm not necessarily in a position to judge too much. I'm not, I say I'm a leftist, but am I a good leftist? Not necessarily. I'm not really going as far as I ought to be on certain things. I could certainly be a lot more, I could be a lot more charitable. I could be a lot more, involved in my community. I could be a lot more informed in general. I could finally set some time to read Marx. That's a big one. Marx is something that you kind of really need to know if you want to consider yourself a good leftist. There's the good leftists are out there. But the thing I think for those good leftists that do exist, is that they need to find a way to speak so that they can get to the rest of us. For the bad leftists, make them better. If they can't find the time to be better themselves in some way, to sit down and do I hate to say it, but do the homework. But and then just to get to other people, get to regular folk. It's kind of a weird thing to say, regular folk, in that sense. It's we're putting it into different strata or different groups. It's I don't, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want I understand that term, the language there can sound like it can be talking down to, but you don't want to talk down to. It's you don't want to dumb things down when you're simplifying things. You just want to make it easy. Because life is hard. Life is hard. We all can recognize the hardness. That's what I think. That's why I think people can be leftist without necessarily having to be good in a sense, because people can recognize how the system fucks them over, how everything is just getting more and more expensive. Everything in general is just becoming monetized. Any little thing you think you want to do, you're then realizing, oh shit, someone's put a price tag on that now. Someone has created a shitty fucking app that I need to put my email into and keep track of, and just all this bullshit. It's I can't just go and do something. I can't just do that. I have to, and you see the rich are getting richer, poor getting poorer, all that sort of shit. You can see that the system fucks you over. You don't need to get into the big things. You don't really need to sit down and read a fucking book to understand it. Is I think more what I wanted to say there. But to try to make ourselves a much more a better society, to build the things that we need. Of course, we have to, you can't just will it out of your hair. You gotta put in the work. I feel like I shouldn't really be saying this, but it's just like I find it funny in a sense of just thinking of those that are online who like to, they like to say that, Bernie's not a good leftist, because he's actually a sock dem, and sock dems, they're basically fascists, and I can understand that he doesn't go far enough, and social democrats aren't necessarily like they're not really fixing the problem of capitalism. Like, they're not tearing the system apart. They're just trying to make it far less brutal to those who are within it. I get that, but it's like he's able to communicate. I'm not saying anything new with any of this shit, but I am just sort of. I just feel like I would elaborate on it, but it's like, he is able to make people understand the problem and understand that they ought to be angry. They ought to not take this shit lying down. And you gotta if you want to go further than Bernie, you gotta know how he talks and just see how you push that further. If you want to prove yourself to be the good leftist, you got to follow Bernie's example. Not fully, of course. Bernie fucked up, but it's easy. It's easy to be an armchair quarterback. To sit like this and be like, oh yeah, I could have done that better. It's harder for you to actually go out and do it. Much harder. So, maybe I am, since I haven't read 1984 in quite a while, maybe, Orwell does kind of touch upon, that the euphemism can also be terrible when it's longer as well, but it's just, he's written a lot. He certainly, he knows a lot of stuff. But it's just something I've been thinking about in terms of that. It's just, I guess a part of me has been thinking about it also in just the sense of understanding that, like, when I consider the creative work that I do, when I consider the art I like to make, or the writing rather, specifically here, I like to use big words. I like to use the flowery language. I am a purple prose guy. Nothing against the beige prose folk. Cormac McCarthy, he's done some pretty good work. And Ernest Hemingway, I'm not necessarily interested in reading him. I read a short story of his when I was younger, and, I understood that he understood the human condition, but I'm just like, this isn't getting to me. But, I respect it. I respect the beige prose folk. And I'm just thinking that as a purple prose guy, as a guy who likes to use the big words, as a word a day basic bitch motherfucker here, when I use the big words, what I hope to do when I use the big words is not so much to show off, to think like, oh, I know how to read a thesaurus. Excuse me. It's like, I know how to read a thesaurus. I know about the grand concepts. You don't know anything because you're just a puny little fellow. You don't know anything. You don't understand the great things about truth, about beauty, about art, about humor, reality. You know, I don't want to do it necessarily for that. There's a part of me that, okay, fine, a little part of me that kind of wants to show off. Okay, let's not bullshit here. But I do it because I like the poeticism behind it. I like the poetry of it, rather, not the poeticism. Poeticism. What the fuck is that? I'm not even sure if that's a word. If it is, I'm not using it right. I mean to say, it's like I like the poetry of big words. And, you know, it's just I sometimes think about, like, how do I communicate the poetry that I have, that I like to use with the big word? How do I communicate that in a way that it's just less it's less big. Just make it smaller. Because, you know, we're in times where people want the small. People want things nice and easy. You know, and I mean that's been for a good while in some respects, but you know, it's just it's something that you have to kind of contend with, and it's tricky. It's tricky because, you know, it's hard to sum up a person in so few words, but you got to know how to do it. You got to know how to make things easy. Because there's no sense in always going for the hard. I understand it. I understand that you can't always have things easy. You can't always. Not everything can be easy. But you know, not everything has to be hard either. And I think that's sort of the thing that gets me about about those people that use the big words. Is that there's a good amount of them that just like to make things hard because they just want to make things hard. They don't want to really express anything. They just want to be kind of petty. And it's easy to be petty. It's very easy to when you think you know when you think you know a lot, it's easy to be like that. But I think you have to fight it. You have to fight feeling like because you got you keep getting your shit kicked in, that that you can feel free to kick others. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a hard thing to fight. Feel a little weird about how that turned, but no, I think there's a certain truth to it there. I think that's gonna do it for now. Yeah, you know, if this interests you, I'll be doing a little bit more of it. If not, too bad. I'll have something else for you if you don't care for this. Take care.